Is for today, everything's okay, everything's okay. Never comes again, another day like yesterday. Is for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.
Good morning, everybody. Over the weekend, I was thinking about a challenge that comes up for me and comes up for a lot of people. It's not a specific challenge. It's not about specific decisions to be made. It's not about necessarily relationships or work or whatever. It is the process by which we decide what we're going to do about relationships, work, etc. Right? So, and again, I struggle with this probably more than a lot of people. It's when people come into therapy and let's say they have a challenging relationship or they've spent 10 years in their job and never really liked it that much, et cetera, et cetera. And they want to talk it through and decide, is this for me? Should I be doing this? How do I make this decision? What does this look like? Now, typically, we can accuse people of being shallow and saying, well, they make everything about money, or they just want to find somebody better, or they're not willing to put in the hard work. But I can tell you as a therapist that people agonize about very humane and self-sacrificing reasons. When people don't want to leave relationships, 99.9% of the time, it's because yes, they don't want to face loneliness, or they don't want to go through the pain, but also most people really agonize over the pain that they will inflict. When people don't want to leave jobs, the most common reason is that they feel responsible. And maybe they've gotten pretty good at their job and they feel somehow that they're being irresponsible or they're abandoning their coworkers. It's really amazing how insulting we are to ourselves as modern humans, and how when people are really, really honest and struggle with things in therapy, how often it's just simply people doing everything they can to remain a humane and responsible human being who is kind and who doesn't disappoint others and who takes care of their responsibilities. So what I'm talking through is this is one of the reasons why people struggle with these decisions, right? And so they'll start looking through the reasons why they should stay. And so you can do a pros cons list. Well, what are the cons? Well, I don't want to abandon my coworkers. You know, I recently hired a new young hire who looks to me for leadership. I think it would be really hard on him or her if I bailed right now. I'm the person between the CEO and my employees who sort of runs interference so that some of that toxicity doesn't run downhill. Reasons to go, I would feel a lot better. I have an offer for more money, or I don't have an offer for more money, but I would be happier. Maybe I would be a better parent, a better partner. When it's a relationship, it gets really deep, right? Where people are like, it tends to be, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, where we all tend to black and white things. Either my partner is behaving so badly that I'm entitled to go, man, this person is horrible, they're toxic, and I have a right to leave. Or, you know what, I elicit some of this behavior and I'm behaving really badly, and if I behave better, maybe I would like my relationship. Rather than, maybe this relationship just doesn't work for me. Maybe it's not a good place for me, and if it's not a good place for me, then there's no way that I'm a good partner for the person I'm with. It's not good for anybody, right? So, should I move across country? Should I pick my kids up and move across country? Is it good for my kids? Is it, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So just imagine any decision that you have to make. And people really agonize over the impact to others versus, is it good for me? And we tend to do this intellectually, and we tend to do it morally. And interestingly, I'm going to tell you that trying to make a moral decision doesn't really work in these situations, because what we mean when we say make a moral decision is what we're referring to are external, somewhat arbitrary mental constructs built by society and built by other people with which we have been inculcated, we've been taught. So there's some mental construct that we've internalized, and when we're trying to make a decision based on moral reasons, we're referring to this thing, this mental construct, and we're using it either to limit ourselves or to say, well, I have permission to do this because what we're really saying is that society would sign off on this. This is the right thing to do because society would sign off on it as a moral choice. So these are some of the reasons people think through these things. These are some of the reasons that we reach for. This is some of the thinking that people do, the most common thinking that people do when they're trying to make a decision. And I want to offer you a different model. I was all in early as a therapist. I was all in. I love the intellectual exercise. I love abstract thought. I love mental constructs, and I can just invent random mental constructs to help you think through the possibilities, et cetera, et cetera. That's like super fun for me. I took philosophy classes in college for fun. That's fun for me. And so I was all in early on, but I started learning and I started figuring out that it's a mistake. It's almost always a mistake to intellectually play through some things in your head, to look at possibilities, to do a pros cons list, and then try to make a decision. And one of the reasons this is a mistake, and I've seen this borne out time and time again, is because when people are doing that, it's because they have not emotionally evolved to the point that they get it. And they're really making that decision because they know it's the right thing. What they do is they intellectually talk that through, and it sounds good, and their therapist says, you know what, that sounds right to me. And then they discipline themselves to make that choice, but they don't really feel it. And so it becomes irrelevant whether they did the right thing or not, because they don't really understand why they did it. They're just referring to some external abstract social construct and going, well, this thing seems to indicate that I should do this. But when you're making big decisions, you should never make a decision unless you at a gut level go, oh my God, of course this is what I should do. I mean, sometimes you're in a time crunch, maybe there are financial issues bearing down on you and you have to decide stick with my job or don't, and you just go, you know what, I don't have time to play this through. I'm just going to do this because I think it's the safest. That happens, okay? Existential pressure is a real thing. But many of these decisions, for example, a relationship, there's nothing pressing other than maybe you're deeply unhappy or it seems dysfunctional. And it's weird for a therapist to say, well, you don't need to make the decision right now. Right? It almost sounds like enabling. It's like, oh, you're just kicking the can down the road. No. The reason I often say that now is, again, because I began to notice that when I did the intellectual work with people and supported them in referring to different belief systems and pros and cons systems and interrogating themselves and how they feel about it, even being sort of somatic and going like at a gut level, what's your gut response? When people didn't really know and they sort of cooked it in their head and went, no, this is right. It doesn't matter if it's right or not because they don't know that it's right. And so what will often happen is, let's say they broke up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. A month later, they're back in therapy Forget about whether it's good for them. You as a therapist, this is why therapists are supposed to never weigh in on whether you should or should not break up unless there's domestic violence. It's not healthy because even if the therapist knows, like this is a super obvious pattern and you know that this person is not going to stay, like whether they break up with them today or in 6 months or 6 years, you know it's not going to work out because there's really clear indicators. It doesn't matter because if that person intellectually manipulates themselves and the therapist frames it for them and they go, well, that makes sense. When the therapist says it, it makes sense. And they go break up. A week later, they're tormented and because they didn't know that they really should. And then they're like, well, you told me to, but I don't really know. And then I did it. And they'll come back and they'll blame the therapist. Right? They'll come back and be like, well, you told me to do that. Some people don't. They just take responsibility and go, well, you know, it was my decision and I did it, but they regret it. And they're unsure again. Should I have done that? Now it's like, well, should I go back and repair? Should I say, you know, and they're in the same position. Should I have been in that relationship or not? Right? So making a decision before you truly know it to be the right or wrong decision at a gut level doesn't work out. You see those sorts of people who come in and they're just their entire life, people who make intellectual decisions, their entire life they feel sort of tormented by, but was it? Should I have? But maybe well, you know what? I left that relationship, but maybe I was the one. So maybe I was eliciting toxic behaviors, and maybe if I had been better, or maybe blah, 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 blah. It changed nothing. It didn't, because in the end, and this is the thing that nobody wants to hear, and it's really hard, but it's as true as gravity. In the end, what we really want to know is we want to know I have the wisdom to make deeply impactful decisions that are right for me and that are healthy and that mean that I can heal and enjoy life and pursue joy and have a life that's worth living. That's what everyone wants to know. In the end, when we come to therapy, we think it's about, should I stay in the relationship or should I not stay in the relationship? Should I keep this job or not keep this job? Or what's happening with me? Why do I feel so anxious? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel that way? In the end, all of that noise goes away if you have a deeply internalized sense of trust that at a gut instinctive level, you make wise decisions that result in your life being better and better, and that give you the space to pursue joy and happiness, and that your life is worth living, that it's worth it for you to be in it. That's all any of us wants. And under all of the complexity, which again, I love that stuff. I chose a job that's almost nothing but that stuff. Underneath all that complexity and making things so complicated in all the different narratives, and it's like, oh, you know, this person's trauma presents as an eating disorder, this person's trauma presents as ADHD, this person's trauma presents as PTSD, this person's trauma presents as anxiety, depression, blah, like all of the stuff, the emotional nervous system dysregulation. Under all that complexity, the one thing that calms and grounds us is the deeply held belief and evidence that we have a deep wisdom that allows us to consistently make healthy decisions, impactful decisions that continue to contribute to a life that has a space for us to seek and experience joy and curiosity and interest and respect for ourselves, because we know that we are wise and we make wise decisions for ourselves. That's all any of us wants. Okay. Today I don't feel as much of all the expansiveness to like talk through a bunch of stuff. So I'm gonna come to the point. It's like, okay, great. So what? So and do what? And I'll invite clients. I'll be like, well, the problem is you're trying to make decisions that are avoidance, in the avoidance of, well, I don't want to do that. Well, I want to be the person who makes an intellectual decision. Well, I don't want to be the person who leaves a relationship because I just feel anxious or like whatever. We're like, okay, you're telling me not to do that. Okay, so what do I do? What does that look like? What is that deeply internalized wisdom? How do I get it? Here's a cheat code. First of all, it's a long, maybe a lifelong, maybe multiple lifetimes, I don't know. But it can be a lifetime long or years long or decades long, depends on how dedicated you are to it. Process. And the cheat code is, if you live in an embodied state of joy and peace, and then you just wait without making an intellectual decision, every single situation, every single person, and every single choice will become glaringly obvious whether it contributes to that joy and peace and well-being or whether it is destructive to it. And if it is destructive to it, that doesn't mean it's easy. Maybe you have years of work to do to extricate, let's say it's a relationship. Maybe you have years of work to do to extricate yourself from that. Or maybe you're making a decision to leave a relationship to your entire family, and maybe there's finances involved, and maybe you live with one of them, and maybe like that doesn't mean that it's not a complicated process, but the decision itself is not complicated. If you live in an embodied state of joy and peace, you don't need an intellectual process. A person or a situation will consistently and irrefutably show you whether it supports that joy and peace or whether it is destructive to it. And if it is destructive to it, decision made. You don't have to think about anything. You don't have to do a pros cons list. All you have to do is do the sometimes very hard work, sometimes painful work, because sometimes you have emotions invested in this thing. Sometimes you haven't let go because you're mourning something that was from your childhood. Sometimes people hold on to painful, dysfunctional relationships because it's a reiteration of their relationship to an abusive parent. And they haven't let go of it because they can't let go of their abusive parent. So maybe there's a bunch of grief and pain and loneliness that they have to face into to make that decision. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's obvious. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's obvious. This is the cheat code for life. This becomes even more important. If you don't live in a pretty consistent state of joy and peace and curiosity, every decision is tortured and tormented. Or you're just one of these people who just believe so deeply in doing what society tells you that that's how you make decisions. Well, you know, my parents thought it would be good to be a doctor and that contributes to the well-being of people, so that's important, and I'll make enough money. And well, okay, great. If that's truly what's good for you, great. I'm not criticizing doctors. Don't get confused. When I use a specific circumstance, I'm not criticizing the circumstance. That circumstance could be the joy and peace for one person. But if you're the sort of person who only did it because society said that's how it works, you live with a lot of confusion, inner conflict, whatever. Maybe you're just used to that, and fine. But if you do not live with a fairly consistent state of joy and peace, every decision you make feels conflicted and confusing, and you end up referring to intellect, because what else are you going to use? Or you're going to refer to what people think is the right thing for you. Maybe it's even people who really love you and know you and want the best for you, but they don't know, because the only thing that can truly tell you what is for you is if it contributes to your joy and peace and well-being. If you do not live with a fairly consistent state of joy and peace and well-being, every decision you have to make is going to seem very confusing, and you're going to try to make it intellectually and flip a coin. Because even if it's quote unquote the right decision, you'll still feel conflicted and confused. Because the only thing that tells you wisely, the only actual truth that you can rely on, is that humans are built to love life. Humans are built to have a nervous system that inhabits a state of resiliency. We are built that way. We're built to love life. The only way to make wise decisions that are right for you, not for somebody else, that are right for you, is to live in a state of joy and peace consistently enough that you can tell if a situation or a person is destructive to it. If they are, you got to choose your way out of that. Or if a person or a situation consistently contributes to your joy and peace, that's right for you. Pursue that. It is the only wisdom available to us. Unless you're enlightened, and I'm not. So I'm just talking to the rest of us schlubs. And people struggle with this because they're good, because we've been taught since we were little children, don't be selfish. Don't only think about yourself. Don't make it all about you. But the truth is, in this deep, profound way, it can only be about you, because you're the one living your life. And if you accept situations and people that make you miserable or confused, you can't be nice to them. You can't love them. You can't contribute to them. If you think you are, it's only because you were taught that an extremely limited and emotionally empty state of being somehow contributes. It doesn't. Sacrificing yourself doesn't help anybody. If you were taught a transactional nature of relationship, well, you know, I'm not that comfortable, but I work hard to be a good father and a good mother, or I work hard to be a good colleague and I really do contribute, like that bullshit. Everybody can feel your energy, and the people who can't, it's because they're wrapped up in their own twisted misery. Woo! Come on, man. That's all there is. It's that simple. It's hard. It can be really, really hard, but it's that fucking simple. I violate it all the time. Like, don't look to me. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching all the time, but I have seen enough and I have practiced long enough to know that it is irrefutably, irresistibly true. It is as sure as gravity. In the human condition, it is sure as gravity. The only way to consistently make decisions that are deeply wise for you and result in you feeling joy and peace and curiosity and things that you want to experience, and that you get a chance to live a life that's somewhat the kind of life that you want to live, is you have to consistently feel a state of joy and peace. And then when things start destroying that thing is not for you, choose your way out of it. That person is not for you, choose your way out of it. Or if it supports it or contributes to it, that's for you. And the reason that's not selfish is because when you're not consistently in a state of joy and peace, you can sit there and follow some rule of what makes you a good person, but it's empty. Maybe you're not costing society, but you're not contributing anything. You're living a somewhat meaningless life, empty of the amazing light and love and joy and wisdom that you could contribute, that you could shine out to the human community, that you could give to the human community. You have limited it and locked it down. When you're making decisions, the cheat code is, and if you are not there, if you never experience it because you live with chronic PTSD, which I did, like, you can't, I know I was there, like, decisions are always fraught and they never seem right, and you can never, every decision was avoidant. When things felt right, it's only that it reduced anxiety, and my life got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Decisions felt right, but they were driven by PTSD. They were driven by a desire to avoid the world and to avoid life and to avoid challenge and to avoid dealing with the excruciating discomfort that came when I engaged in anything. So it doesn't matter how painful it was, but the truth is I couldn't make wise decisions without some kind of space and some kind of sense of what is joy and peace, and then feeling like, oh, it contributed. When I went to grad school for psychology, I consistently felt throughout, like, oh my God, this is my thing. Oh my God, I love my classmates and my colleagues, like, this is my thing, this is my thing. It was pretty consistent. And there were times I thought it was going to kill me. When I was working in South LA at a clinic with some pretty severe mental health issues and some homelessness, and people who had lived through sometimes horrors that are unimaginable, and there was sadness and suicidality and addiction and homelessness, like, it was hard. And I was doing that for 8 hours a day, and then going to 6 hours of class from like 4 to 10 or like whatever the hell it was, twice a week, and then working on paper. There were times I always felt like, man, this is going to kill me. I think the last 6 months or last year of my program, I was working 40 hours a week. I'd taken a job at the clinic where I had interned, or where I had done my whatever. But in the middle of all of it, it felt so right. And I kept like, I just kept feeling like, oh, these are my people. This is my thing. These are my people. This is my thing. I found my thing. After decades, I found my thing. And I doubled down on it. And I'm so grateful every day, because my life is way better than it was 15 years ago. Just from that professional choice to do the hard thing and stick that out, and then to become a therapist, because this is my thing. And you can't look to other people to decide what your thing is. If you went out on the street and interviewed 50 people and said, hey, you're going to listen to people struggle with things, and they're going to cry, and they're going to tell you about horrible experiences they've had, some of that involving molestation or horrible abuse, and they're going to struggle with it, and you're going to see them struggle, and sometimes you're going to worry that maybe they're not going to make it. They're going to make a choice that ends that, like, and that you get to support people, and that people will heal in front of you, and, you know, et cetera. Like, if you went and asked people, do you want to do this? I'd be willing to bet a lot of people would be like, out of your fucking mind? Are you out of your fucking mind? Hell no, I don't want to do that. I do. This is my joy. This is my peace. This is my thing. I love it. Okay? But you can't look to what other people are doing. You can't be like, well, you know, becoming a lawyer is really solid because, you know, there's a lot of money in it, and and there's job security. I don't know if there is. I'm just making shit up, right? But all the things that we say to line up whether something is right or wrong, irrelevant. You can make 2.5 million a year, have an incredible benefit package, and if you're miserable the entire time, that is your life that you're frittering away. All you're doing is selling your life an hour at a time. Who cares what the price is? Right? So you can't look to what other people are doing. Which tells us that the most important thing you could possibly do is to meditate, hike in nature, eat healthy, do whatever it takes to begin experiencing joy and peace as an embodied state, because it is the only way you can possibly make wise decisions about life that consistently result in you having a life worth living. I'm going to say one more time and I'm going to end. Whatever you got to do, take your vitamins, go to therapy, meditate, go hiking, go to your favorite coffee shop, like whatever it is that slowly begins to embody joy and peace for you consistently, you got to do that, because having a somewhat consistent state of joy and peace is the only thing that allows you to make decisions that are consistently predictive of you having a life worth living. Everything else is intellectual, abstract bullshit constructed by society. Yes, meant sincerely, but it won't help you not one fucking iota. Because I've done it for half a century and I've watched people do it. It doesn't work. People make decisions and then they're still confused and they're still miserable, even if it might accidentally have been the right decision 2 years later. But if they had truly, at a gut level, known that it was right 2 years later, they would find their peace and their joy and their happiness. Because they intellectually manipulated themselves into making the decision, they're still confused. Living with a fairly consistent state of joy and peace is the only way to make wise decisions that result in a life worth living. All right, you guys. Love you. Have a great day. See you next time. Bye.
Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.